Jake, do you have any strong opinions about Gone in 60 Seconds?
The movie's objectively horrible, but it really shaped my... Like, it shaped my childhood. Like, it came out right as I was, like 10 or 11 years old. And I watched it over and over and over with a little group of friends in the neighborhood, and we thought it was just the coolest thing, and the acting was so great, and the chase scenes were so realistic, and you watch it now, and it's like, oh, this is so bad.
It's still good, Jake. It's still good.
Okay.
Episode 3, we got Gone in 60 Seconds, not to be confused with Gone in 60 Seconds, the 1974 movie. This is the 2000 movie starring Nicolas Cage. So tonight we've got Jake Thiewes of Out Motorsports, which is, you do blogging. Do you have YouTube as well?
We do.
Oh, yeah. And then we've got Matthew Becker, returning from Too Fast, Too Furious, from Potato Mustang. So, Gone in 60 Seconds. To start out with this movie, the opening credits from like second one go so hard. Like you hear like engines just revving, and then of course you got the classic Jerry Bruckheimer like lightning explosion title, and then there's that Junkie XL song or whoever it is. Do you remember?
It's Moby.
It's called
Moby.
Flower.
Oh yeah, Moby.
Yeah.
Moby, that's correct. Yeah. So you got this opening montage.
It's the longest intro ever too. It goes for 2 minutes. They play like the entire song.
But once you get into the actual movie, it opens with Kip, played by Giovanni Ribisi. He's boosting a terrible, lousy 996 for some reason. And then he slams it through the dealership window and then stupidly tries to drag race some rando in a Honda Civic, and then the cops are onto him because he's making all kinds of ruckus, and he tries to reconvene with his crew of car thieves, and they narrowly escape, all getting arrested. They have a blacklight board with the names of all these cars on it, use a UV light to see the names. And then when they're leaving, somebody smashes the light, which then, becomes a clue later.
Yeah, and then I love the line he says before he breaks the window. He's like, I got to get my tool. And he grabs a brick.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know how he races the guy in the Civic? So I was looking on IMDb. There's someone listed in the cast named Michael Owen. And I kid you not, It says kid in rice burner.
Wow.
And it's a dude who's like probably in his like mid 20s if you watch the movie.
Yeah.
And they just list him
he
as
looked older
Michael
than
Owen.
that to me. He looked to be like a full ass adult. Like
he was an old
35.
dude in a Civic Si with a
wing on it.
And the best part, the opening sequence for me had a big impact on just like setting the stage for the movie. And again, looking at it now objectively, it's like pretty predictable and cheesy. The thing that I learned, I was doing some reading, and that silver 911 that they stole, it was custom built for the movie, and it's actually an air-cooled 78 911 that they rebodied to be a 996.
What?
For
Dead
real?
serious, because apparently they needed the lighter weight of the chassis of the older car because it was like 700 pounds lighter. They needed the lighter weight to make the jump out of the dealership.
What? That's crazy.
So
I'm gonna have to look that up.
There's your trivia, and they rebodied it to be the most boring color, like base model 911.
After this scene, we cut to Nick Cage as Memphis Reigns, which is a hilarious name. He's working at some garage, like teaching kids how to go-kart, because in his past he was some legendary car thief or whatever, and now he's going straight, which, classic trope. But of course he's going to get called back into his old life and yada yada. We've seen this all before. So then the Kip's like second in command. Don't really remember his name. He's the slick back hair guy.
Atlee.
Adley, yeah.
Yeah.
So he comes to Memphis and he's telling him about this boss, Calitri, how Kip screwed up the job and Calitri basically wants him dead. And so Memphis, he goes back to Long Beach to smooth things over with Calitri. And as he's going there, Calitri is putting Kip into a third-gen Firebird and is about to crush him inside of it. Also, during the scene, Calitri is showing off like his carpentry work to Memphis.
They call him the carpenter.
Yeah, including this coffin that he like dramatically opens as if you didn't already know it was a coffin. Like, it was obviously a coffin. I don't know if that's supposed to be like a surprise twist or something. They're crushing him inside this Firebird. And Memphis, he really rides out the clock on that one. Like, if he had waited 1 second longer, Kip would have been
the roof is like
splat.
Level with the door.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But he basically, convinces Calitri that he is going to finish the job with not much time, because they basically have 3 nights to steal all 50 of these cars that were on the list with no crew, and they go from there. So then Kip shows his gratitude to Memphis by making him an absolutely disgusting breakfast. Like,
he just ruins everything.
You know what that was? I couldn't tell what it was apart from like torched hamburger meat with maybe some bacon sprinkled on it.
Ground beef
like,
with
does
half
he
a
eat
bottle
that
of
every
salt.
day? Yeah.
I guess my
worst.
question is like, what was he trying to make there?
Yeah. It was like hamburger helper without the helper.
Right.
Yeah. And then Nick Cage, he has one of his best like, not even a line, just a reaction, is him eating the terrible meat.
That's good.
Also, you got to mention, this is a Jerry Bruckheimer produced film, which, as far as producers go, like, he hasn't directed a film himself yet. Jerry Bruckheimer films always have a certain look to them, or they usually do, especially in this time period where everything is like high saturation, high contrast, and everything is either shot at golden hour, or some of them are filtered to look like golden hour, I believe, especially near the end. But there are some real golden hour shots in there too, which leads me to believe that nothing gets done in the afternoon in this film or in this extended universe of like Top Gun and Days of Thunder. Just, if you got to do something, you're doing it at like 5 a.m. or 5 p.m. We introduce our 2 detectives played by Delroy Lindo and Timothy Oliphant. They confront Rains. He goes to a diner where his mom works to, kind of just reconnect with her. And then these detectives confront him and basically say, if you're so much as running a red light, like, we're going to nab your ass, which is fair, I guess, with his record.
One line I love is when he goes right before that, when Memphis Raines goes to see his mom at the diner. He's like talking about how he needs to get Kip like out of trouble, and he's like, it means doing things I promised you I'd never do again. And it's like stealing cars. It's not like murdering babies or something, like, or like he makes it sound, I mean, I get it, but it makes it sound a lot worse than it actually is.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building.
He goes to this restoration shop where his father figure, Robert Duvall, works, and it's like, you gotta put together a crew for me. And then there's a getting the band together montage that is, it's started off by a very, very bad Asian lady can't drive joke.
in a Dodge Aries.
Yeah, I was like,
speaking of
I
our
was like,
conversation,
oh, this is not good.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that did not have to be there. There's this montage of all these characters, basic heist movie trope, and it all feels very similar to the Ocean's 11 remake that came out like 1 year after this. So I have to imagine that like they knew that was in pre-production at the time and wanted to like steal its thunder somehow, or maybe it's just a coincidence. But it all feels kind of like a paint by numbers version of Ocean's 11, where they introduce these characters, but like none of them are particularly interesting. Like there's Sphinx, that's fun because he's a giant and he doesn't talk. And then there's Mirror Man, who's fun. He has a couple funny moments. And then the rest of them are just like there.
the thing with
I love
Sphinx
the
that
mortuary.
I was going to say the mortuary where he gets the phone call and he pushes a button to say, yes, I can hear you. And he's like eating a sandwich looking at a dead body and he just like puts the sandwich on the body.
Yeah, the rest of those characters, I could take them or leave them, honestly. The driving instructor at the beginning kind of feels like a discount Bernie Mac, who Bernie Mac was in Ocean's 11, which is, it can't be a coincidence, right? It feels like a knockoff of the Bernie Mac character from Ocean's 11, yet it came out before Ocean's 11. They put this crew together, and it ends with Memphis going to his ex, Sway, played by Angelina Jolie, who is it feels like they had like a full cast and then somebody was like, we need a female character, so then they just put her in there. She doesn't really have anything to do or interesting things to say. It's just like she's there, which is a big letdown because, it's good to have female characters that have agency and have interesting things to do, and she just is not at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and the interesting thing is apparently that role was created for her. It wasn't like they cast it and, auditioned several different women. They wrote it with her in mind.
So Memphis, he's at this classic Ferrari shop where she works, and he walks up he walks up to the garage and she's like under the car, and then he goes, it sounds like it's running lean, and I'm pretty sure the car wasn't running. Like, I'm pretty sure he did not hear that car run.
Sounds like the left bank's running lean.
That killed me. I had to rewind that like 3 times just to make sure. Anyway, so then she leaves this Ferrari garage, who apparently doesn't pay her all that much because she also has to bartend at nights. And I understand like being a mechanic is not like the highest paying job, but it can be, especially if you're working on things like Ferraris. Yeah. I imagine they get paid more than somebody who's changing oil in a Corolla, but I don't know.
They do live in LA though, right?
Yeah, so that rent is killer. Last thing I want to say about Angelina Jolie is that they gave her, I doubt she requested this, they gave her like these nasty like bleached braids that are like halfway to dreadlocks, and I guess it was the style at the time.
It's quite maybe. A look.
Yeah. I mean, if I was her, I would be hating whoever came up with that hairstyle. She probably had to chop her hair off after shooting was done. There's this whole side plot with like some gangbangers like trying to get Memphis for past crimes, and it doesn't really amount to anything. They just kind of leave the plot halfway through.
I love Master P his character's name too. I think it's Johnny B. So they're just like, it's like no one even put any effort into that. They're like, all right, this is going to be Johnny B and his crew of gangsters. Yep.
So then our detectives, they are on the case with Kip. So as the crew is planning their next job, the detectives are trying to track them down, and they figure out that basically one of the guys who was not very smart was cloning these Mercedes keys at like a shady dealership, and they figure out where this dealership is and they track them through that. Then after this, we're introduced to Eleanor for the first time, which is the only car in the film with a backstory. So basically, Memphis is like ogling the car in the parking lot, and then one of the other characters is explaining how he's like tried to steal this Shelby Mustang like 5 times or whatever, and every single time something goes wrong, which I don't know how he got away with that each time, but
you'd think after the 3rd or 4th time the owner would put it somewhere more secured.
Yeah, exactly. It's just sitting in a parking garage.
Or are we assuming that there's multiple versions of this car? Or is it
I think
he
it
tried
was
to steal the same car? Because at some point
one.
they say something like he put it into the river or something like, or put it into the ocean or something like that. They say some line about him.
Like he fell off a pier.
Yeah, he fell off a pier. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So it made me think that there's multiple cars and he's tried to steal and at least put one of them in the pier. So
maybe. I mean, later on, the detective says that there's like only one Shelby Mustang in town, which they didn't make that many of them, so it kind of makes sense.
Also, I don't know if this is worth mentioning, but when Memphis goes to the Ferrari dealer, and he's like,
"Oh yeah, that's pretty funny."
Two Rogers don't make a right, and he's like, "There's too many self-indulgent wieners in this town with too much bloody money," or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he gets the guy
He's
to
like
tell him all the cars that are in the warehouse, apparently, which plays out later on.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So yeah, and then other thing about Eleanor is it has this kind of lame 2000s body kit on it, which I honestly don't hate the body kit. It's just like the LED eBay lights that really ruin it for me. If it didn't have that, like I would be totally game for it. But that kit was actually designed by Chip Foose, which makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's fitting, isn't it?
Oh yeah, yeah. Then there's another bit where the gangbangers come back and they shoot up like one of the guy's cars, and
the worst ambush ever.
Yeah, yeah. And then they like hide in a diner, and I honestly don't remember what happens with that plot after that, but it doesn't matter. And then Kip's dumb friend steals a random car that's not one of the cars that they need to steal. Right. He just steals it off the street and brings it to the garage, and it's full of drugs in the trunk, and that almost gets them caught by the detectives. We've got just before the heist, and they spend 2 days planning, and then plan on stealing every single one of these 50 cars in the 3rd night, which is impressive, honestly. So then these characters hype themselves up by listening to Lowrider by War and like getting all misty-eyed as if it's Ave Maria or something like that, which is funny. I feel like that was like a Nick Cage original. Like I feel like he wrote that scene because it's just perfect Cage.
Well, and then the very end, the song ends and he kind of brings his hands up and he goes, "Let's ride," and it's like,
yeah, it's like, "Let's ride."
And also right before that, when he puts on his black leather jacket and he's like, "I'm a bad man," or something like that. Or Memphis is a bad man.
I'm a very bad man.
You know that Nick Cage wrote that whole like sequence. Or they just let him like wing it.
Here it comes. It's intermission time.
They begin what I would call the stealing montage by taking these Ferraris out of the warehouse. And the thing that pisses me off is that they take all of these like late model Ferraris, and I think there's like a 375 or whatever the 70s one was, and then they take like a 550, I think, maybe a 575, and they just leave an F40 just sitting there.
I saw that. I was like, what? How is the F40 not on the list? Presumably being out of the game, like the car theft game, for 6 years has not impacted Memphis or his crew's ability to steal new cars. Like they just know exactly what to do.
What looks like an like ODB reader to the car,
right?
And
to like interrupt the ECU or something.
Maybe. I mean, also, you technically can start cars with ODB scanners these days, but you need like a manufacturer-specific scanner to be able to do that.
There's a part, I think it's a Ford Thunderbird, that it shows them doing the screwdriver on the starter solenoid trick.
Yeah, I noted that too.
I was like, so when we were talking about my Mustang earlier, I was on one of the Mustang forums, and I was like, someone was trying to like tell me how to do that, and I was convinced that like all these guys were just trying to get me to like electrocute myself.
I did that once by accident when I was changing the oil at my old garage job. I was changing the oil on a 4-wheel drive Ranger, which is awful because you basically have to put your tool like past the starter to be able to reach the oil filter. But yeah, I accidentally knocked the starter and it spun up. It didn't engage. But yeah, you can totally do that if you put the wires in the right place. But before he even starts it, he seemingly hot wires the car by jamming a screwdriver into the fog light like housing
to pop the doors open or something.
I have no clue what that is supposed to accomplish.
It was convincing enough back in 2000.
I was not convinced. Then Memphis and Sway have a very uncomfortable scene where he like tries to make out with her while talking about car parts, like just reciting a bunch of car parts.
Throttle linkage, clutch master solenoid, double overhead camshaft, drain inline 6, triple Weber carburetors.
And then she just kind of pushes him off, and they go back to the job, and that's like the most romantic moment in the movie. That's been a running theme with all three of the episodes so far.
Too Fast, Too Furious, the like half a second long kiss.
Yeah.
And that's like the extent of it.
All of these car movies written by straight men seem to not care too much about relationships, which I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when she says like the shifter gets in the way, he has the weirdest delivery where he's like, yeah, you don't want to mess up the single mesh,
right?
Something about then he says something about overhead camshafts, carburetors, like
exactly.
And at that point, she is
awkward.
sufficiently turned off enough that she's like, "All right, let's just steal this
funny
car."
Yep. Then you've got this cheesy scene, but I still enjoy it to this day, where Mirror Man distracts the impound guy.
She's a brick.
House.
Every time I drive my Volvo, they tow it.
We don't have a Volvo in the lot.
Hey, you got a Volvo.
Hey man. he's like waving. It's so obvious. It's pretty corny.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty.
During that scene too, in the background they have a metal sign, which is the only prop I believe that was used from the original Gone in 60 Seconds, which is where the title of the film actually comes from. So if you look in the background, there's a sign that says, I believe it's like, if you leave your car unlocked, it'll be gone in 60 seconds. And
I missed that.
They either made a copy of that from the 70s movie, or they had the original one. And so that's like the only connective tissue between these two movies. So then the detectives, this is the point where they discover that the crew was using UV lights to hide the list of cars. So they go back to the old crime scene and they look at the list and they goes, okay, these are all the cars that they're going to be going for. And then the older detective, can't remember the actor's name. Hold on.
Delroy Lindo.
Yeah, Delroy Lindo. He's like, I know that Memphis is going to go for the Shelby last, and there's only one of those in town. So then we know that there's going to be a showdown in just a little bit.
Oh, but also don't forget about where they steal the Cadillac in suburbia, and then they get lost. And the rent-a-cops are like trigger happy lunatics. Like,
yeah, they're trigger happy lunatics
driving,
and they're driving Ford Contour cop cars. And,
yeah.
And they steal a first-gen Escalade, which they made like 9 of. And that whole scene, it's like the young kid that steals it, and then he gets shot, and he was just trying to be cool and help. And that was just that was a lot.
It was something.
Yeah, Which at the end, Calitri makes a big stink about the cars being damaged, and yet there's this Escalade that now has bullet holes in it and probably has blood in the back seat,
Right.
but they never mention that part.
I thought about that too. I was like, what? I was like, he's not mad about this one?
Exactly.
Another thing I thought of when you were talking about how Raymond Calitri is not mad about the Cadillac Escalade having like bullet holes is the Hummer. Do you remember the snake Hummer?
Oh, we didn't even talk about the Hummer.
They're driving it down
plows the Buick off of the ramp,
the spiral, and just scraping scraping it, and then they knock over they ram a cop car.
Well, so that it's like a Cutlass like detective car that's coming up, and the Hummer's coming down, and Sphinx is driving it, so he's like not saying anything. And he pushes the guy completely off, and apparently that wasn't supposed to happen, and they just left it in the movie. And the Cutlass fell like 5 feet.
The actor who was playing Sphinx, like they just put him in the Hummer and just told him to ram into this other car,
right, just drive forward,
pushed it off the ramp. Yeah, and during this whole time, DMX is blaring, which is great.
And there's a snake in the Hummer.
Memphis, he goes after Eleanor just as golden hour is breaking, which is perfect for our director here. And the detectives are meeting him at the parking garage, and a chase breaks out, which is definitely the highlight of the film, because I looked up the cinematographer. Like, he doesn't have like a lot of stunt work on his resume or anything like that. So I don't know if they brought somebody in to shoot the car chases with the Shelby, but like all of this stunt work, the filmography of the car chase is like leagues above pretty much the entire rest of the film. It is like masterful, really, what they do in like the few minutes that is actually the chase. It calls to mind, you remember like the chase scene at the beginning of The Rock, which is also Jerry Bruckheimer, directed by Michael Bay. Like I like have the two like movies playing at the same time in my mind, and it's like how did Jerry Bruckheimer, and he had different collaborators in each movie, but how did it go so wrong at the beginning of The Rock and then so right at the end of this movie? Like, the chase in The Rock is like so fake looking, and like you've got the Hummer like smashing into a car and stopping dead, and then in the next shot it's going full speed again. You remember that crap? And then
I love The Rocks. I haven't watched it probably in like 5 or 6 years, so I have to rewatch it.
That chase is so bad. And you've got also with Nick Cage, and you've got him driving the Ferrari, and he's like driving through parking meters, and like you can see the parking meter hit the windshield and like shatter the windshield, and then in the next shot it's fine again.
But then they do this one and they get it so right. Good.
The reason why it looks so real is because it was real. Like going back to Too Fast, Too Furious, like all of the interior shots they did on a green screen pretty much. You remember that? Mm-hmm. They would put the car on a stage and just like, green screen the outside and just shoot the car that way. In this film, when they were doing interior shots, they just put Nicolas Cage in the car and they put cameras on the car and they were like, yeah, just drive and we'll film you driving, which is why it looks so real. I'm not exactly sure what percentage Nick Cage did of his driving, but compared to a lot of these movies, he did like a large percentage of his stunt driving, and it really shows. From what I heard the director saying and from what I read, like when he's doing like a lot of the drifts and when he does like the 180 J-turn, like that is him doing all of that, which is insane to me. Except for Tom Cruise, Bullet, Steve McQueen. Like, I've never heard of an actor doing all of that, but apparently he did it. And he trained at the Bondurant school for this role. And so basically they put him in like a 1965 Mustang that had been tuned a little bit. So he basically trained all of the choreography in that. And then they put him in the 67 Mustang, which is very similar. And so he pretty much nailed it. So then you've got Eleanor sliding into the LA River, which every action movie in LA, it's got to have an LA River scene. So yeah, you've got like all of these cops going down the river. You've got a police helicopter that's flying like 2 feet off the ground. But yeah, that's great. He hits nitrous, which it's got like a button on the shifter that says "Go baby go," and I think they claim he hits like 160 miles an hour or something like that.
And the helicopter pilot is like, he's gone.
Yeah.
Right.
give up.
And when he hits the nitrous button, he's already at the top of fourth gear. They show that it's got like a big tack on top of the steering column that's at like
maybe
8,800 RPM. And like,
really?
Where are you going from there?
That's why it was like spraying steam later. It's because he destroyed every single valve.
Right. They all came out and danced on the hood a little bit.
Then he loses the cops in the LA River, but it doesn't last very long because you've got a little scene where he's like trying to hide from this cop car, and he knocks like the mirror off on a truck, and then the car seemingly is mad at him because it has a soul or something, and it starts stalling. Or maybe it's because he blew out the valves like 2 minutes ago.
It's just very
nitrous
tired.
at 160 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. So then the cop hears him trying to start the car up again, and the chase is on all over again. So then you've got this him going through this construction site, which also has some great choreography. You've got him jumping like directly almost into a like front loader construction vehicle, which I think Cage also did that stunt, which is crazy. Also a lot of this chase choreography, they said they pretty much had to improvise because it was like changing like day by day, which is once again crazy that they pulled it off as well as they did. So you've got Eleanor dodging around this construction equipment. There's like a gas canister, which I'm not sure what they use that for.
That's my favorite.
Drop
like
it,
zipping all
and
around.
It just
it like tears
great.
through a truck and smacks a cop car, flies around, almost kills some people, slams into another cop car, hits Castlebeck's BMW. It's like it's amazing.
Yeah, they do like the PG thing where they like show the guy afterwards going, "I'm okay,"
right.
just so you don't like have to reconcile with Memphis like being a manslaughter or something along those lines. So
wait, was that the guy who got hit by a propane, or the guy who got hit by the wrecking ball?
Yeah, I mean, they do that a few times. They do that with both of them, and also the cop that gets hit by the bus. Like they zoom the camera in to make sure he's okay.
Yeah,
I love the wrecking ball scene because like the Jeep Cherokee goes through the wall, and the guy's like, "Are you okay? Are you sure? Because you just went through a wall."
Yeah, exactly.
So apparently, when they filmed that little bit, Castlebeck was not supposed to hit the Jeep when he stopped the BMW, and all that front end damage was like not planned.
With the canister, they did a combination of practical and CGI with that, which ends up looking like pretty good as it's shot. So as on the practical side, they had like a cable pulling it around, and then they added like CGI steam afterwards. And then there were a couple shots where it's like zipping back and forth, which they did totally CGI. But when it's like crashing through walls and stuff, that's all practical. And then they also with the wrecking ball shot, they had Nick Cage in the car driving first, and then they put in a CGI wrecking ball, narrowly missing him because they didn't want to do that with a real one, obviously. And then they had a real wrecking ball hitting the Jeep, which had a dummy in it. And then they just composited the two together, and it ends up looking real good. So after all this big chase, Memphis ends up getting stuck in traffic on one of the bridges connecting LA to Long Beach. Can't remember the name exactly, but there's a wreck ahead. Both lanes are jammed up, so he sees a ramp truck in typical 70s fashion, and he just goes, "I'm just gonna send it." And so we've got a shot of him driving up the ramp truck, which is a real car, cut to a shot of a really bad CGI model flying an absurdly long distance. And then it cuts to a real car again, slamming on the ground and being like half destroyed. But of course, after it cuts, the car is pretty much fine. There's like a dent in the hood afterwards.
Right, like the nose is tweaked just a little.
I also saw the behind the scenes on that jump, and they actually it was 2 jumps and then connected with the terrible CGI shot. So the first jump, the car didn't go very far, so they actually drove it over the ramp truck, and then they literally like made a cushion out of like cardboard boxes that the car landed on. Yeah. So
it's like,
apparently
who thought that cardboard boxes were gonna do anything? Like,
well, apparently the car was mostly intact after landing on those cardboard boxes, but then the second car, which was the landing car, slams flat on the ground, and then in the actual movie they cut before this happens, but in the behind the scenes you can see it like spinning 180 degrees and just slamming right into the divider. So then Cage, he makes it to the shipyard to deliver the last of the 50 cars, and then Calitri is like, I ordered I'm not going to try to do a British accent.
50 cars,
He's
not
like,
49 and a half.
That was pretty bad too.
But that's about as good as he sounds.
He shows up 12 minutes late with a damaged car, and then Calitri is like, just crush the car, and then I'm just going to try and kill Memphis. And then Cage, as he's watching the Mustang like get dropped into the crusher, has a terrible line where he just like whispers,
Unicorn. What?
Like,
Nothing.
I think they should have done a second take on that one.
And the guy's like, what? And he's like, nothing.
Yeah.
Like the guys that are about to kill him.
Yeah.
Also, the Calitri has a really bad line there too. He's like, one rains is as good as another. Whenever it rains, it pours.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Like who approved this? This is bad writing.
He's about to get killed by these goons, and Kip shows up at the last second to save him. And Calitri hilariously throws a fit after Memphis comes in and is like smashing all of his furniture as if he's like killing his child or something.
He has an aneurysm.
Yeah.
He just like loses it.
Yeah. So then at this point, the older detective is coming in into the showdown. I don't know what happens to Timothy Oliphant at this point. Like, he literally does not show up after the wrecking ball scene. Like, he's just gone, which is odd. Maybe he walked off set.
No, there's a part where him and Castlebeck are like, they're standing at like a stairwell, and he's like, and Castlebeck says something to him, and then Timothy Oliphant's character goes, I'm good, and then he like starts walking down the stairs, and then that's like the last you see. And I'm like, I was watching that, I was like, where does he mean?
Maybe
like he's just it was weird. It was very strangely placed.
Then we've got our detective Memphis and Calitri all showing up to the showdown, which I believe is in a steam factory.
We were just talking about the steam.
Yeah. Do you know what that building was supposed to be? There's just like millions of pipes all around.
It's just the steam factory that's a part of. Well, there's the steam factory that's a part of the junkyard, that's a part of the woodworking shop, that's a part of the shipping container operation. Like, it's.
Yeah, it's an all.
Sounds like a reasonable business to me.
It seemed like they couldn't. They were just like, let's pick a bunch of tropes about bad guys and just
smash them together.
Yep.
And make it work.
Yep. So then Calitri, the detective, they're chasing each other around for a bit, and then eventually you've got Calitri is he's got the detective in his sights. I believe he's holding a gun on him. Memphis steps in, saves the detective's life, kicks Calitri into a green screen, killing him.
Very Hans Gruber-esque.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got a hilarious shot of him of him crash landing into the coffin that he had built, which ties a neat little bow on everything. So yeah, and then you've got a scene which is very similar to Conor O'Brien and Dominic, which is also a strange coincidence, but in the
moral dilemma.
Yeah. So the detective, Memphis, is like, here's all these shipping containers full of cars, you can have them. And the detective is like, I guess I'll let you go. Which I don't know if there are any repercussions for that. Yeah. Which,
a brother's love is a brother's love.
Yeah. Which his partner Timothy Oliphant also knows all of this information, so couldn't he just rat him out? So yeah, he just lets Memphis go. It's all wrapped up very neatly, and then cuts to the crew having a grill out, where they have a grill made out of a Firebird front clip, which is neat. And then they buy a GT500 junker for him, which I guess they just found laying around. And then you've got him driving off with Sway, who I guess maybe they're together or not, who knows. So
I love the line that Robert Duvall says. He's like, "It's a heap, but give it a couple weeks and it'll look like a streamlined butterfly." Like, what is that? What?
It's like a Muhammad Ali reference or something. So yeah, that pretty much closes out the film. Side note here, it was directed by Dominic Sena, who has not very many feature credits to him. He did do Swordfish, which was that terrible hacker movie with Halle Berry.
John Travolta.
Yeah, John Travolta and Wolverine. What's his name?
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman, yeah. He did that, and then he also did like all of Janet Jackson's videos. So I guess that gave him the cred to do Gone in 60 Seconds.
You know, that lack of experience being considered, that seems like a pretty good effort on the film.
Yeah. Meet your drive-in theater potato expert. He selects only the most magnificent potatoes. Then he turns them into crisp, golden, perfect French fries.
As far as closing thoughts on the film, favorite moments, favorite characters, favorite cars, I'll start. Favorite cars, I like that. Doesn't really show up much. I like that custom 49 Mercury that's like spitting flames. That's cool. I like the XJ220. I like, as far as characters go, I like Mirror Man. I forgot to mention, Mirror Man also has a scene where he just shows up to a valet and just steals the car out of the valet line. That's pretty funny.
And after insulting the guy
and his wife, exactly. But yeah, I like Mirror Man. I like Sphinx. The other crew members have nothing going on really, including Sway. Kip doesn't end up having that much going on, but the breakfast scene is hilarious, so I will give him that. And then
and the brick, his tool.
Yeah. And then favorite scenes, you've got the Shelby chase. That goes without saying. But apart from that, the Sphinx and the Mirror Man snake scene, that's funny. The Mirror Man distracting the impound guy scene, that's funny. And then Memphis explaining racing to like 8-year-olds, that's also kind of funny, so I'll give him that one. And then Jake, what did you enjoy?
Well, so car-wise, I mean, when I was, like, this movie came out when I was a kid, and Eleanor, I thought, was so hot. Like, that was the epitome of a cool Mustang. And of course now, you know, I would love an old Mustang, but probably not that one. I think both of the undercover detective cars really do it for me, because they had the E39, and like I have become a huge BMW dork. I've owned like 13 of them for some reason, and most of them were not good. Like, don't be impressed by that. But but the fact that they use an E39 540, which I've driven, like they have school bus steering, they're not actually that great to drive in a sporty context, is just objectively hilarious, and like who's making the big bucks there. I love the scene with the Hummer because it's just so ridiculous, and I also love the stakeout scenes where they're finding all the cars the night before, driving around in like the minivans, because it's just so plain, but I think it's well done. And then the piece of the Shelby chase that I love is when there's the wrecking ball and the gas canister, and it's like all that chaos on the pier. Yeah. I think it's just so slick. Mm-hmm. When there's one cop car that crosses the street and gets hit by a bus or a truck or something, and they explain how they did it with a system of pulleys and cables between the two vehicles, and just the physics of how they did that I thought was very cool. Mm-hmm. I remember being impressed by that as a kid.
Yeah,
that was pretty. I remember seeing that, and I was like, pulleys. I was like, I wouldn't have ever thought that would be a way that they would. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know anything about physics, so.
Well, you can use. They probably use like a planetary gear or something like that to double up the acceleration on the tow car versus the truck that's pulling it. But that's nerd crap. So, yeah, I had the thought, which was I don't know who like put this body kit and a nitrous kit into this original GT500, but they're probably a lot of fun. And then from what I've heard, I didn't actually find a like photo or video or anything of it, but from what I heard, like the company that built the Eleanor cars, and they did like 12 or 13 of them, they apparently converted an actual GT500, which they then gifted to Jerry Bruckheimer. So he I don't know if he still owns that, but he owned that at some point, and he said it was like too scary to drive, which if it's an actual 428, I can buy that.
For as far as the cars go, I also love Eleanor. I feel like up until like maybe even a few years ago, I still thought that the Eleanor Mustang was like a real like special Mustang, like not just like even within the GT500 space. And I it's definitely cheesy, but I just remember like seeing it when I was younger and just being like, man, this thing is like the peak of like old restored, like a resto modded Mustang. And then I think it's an F355 Spider that's in the scene where they're stealing all the cars from the warehouse. And I just am like, I know that's kind of a fairly basic Ferrari, but I love those things. I love the way they look. The Diablo is really cool. And then I love Atlee's car, the black Cadillac Eldorado from like probably from like the late 90s. And then there's also the car that they steal that's not on the list, the 83 Eldorado. Yeah. I had a friend who had something kind of similar to that back in the day. And just cruising around that thing with like ridiculous like 15-inch subwoofers and like just acting like a total idiot. It just like it brings back a lot of memories.
Oh yeah.
Was your friends also filled with a bunch of cocaine?
No, not that I'm aware of. But, and then as far as the scenes, I love the lowrider scene, like the leather jacket, and then they play lowrider. The stereotypical like Nick Cage masterful scene, and then of course I love the Sphinx and Mirror Man in the Hummer going down the spiral parking structure. And I love we didn't really talk about him, but Freb, the guy who they call Gilligan, he's like the friend who doesn't do anything. He's the guy who steals the car that's not on the list. And his name is Fred with a B, like Freb.
Yeah.
And he kind of looks like a younger Keanu Reeves. And then also I love the dude Tumbler, who is the guy with the sideburns or whatever. Yeah. And when the cops come to the garage, he gets the metal pipe and he's like holding it, and Nicolas Cage is like, no. And then later he's like, what were you gonna do with that? He's like, I was gonna bonk him. And he's like, bonk him? Like, what?
I mean, it's fairly obvious.
I love that scene.
And to close out, just where can we find you guys and your stuff? Jake, you got stuff. What you got?
Yeah, we do have stuff. So we have a website full of all sorts of fun articles, new car reviews, old car retro reviews. That's just outmotorsports.com. We're also growing our YouTube channel, same name, Out Motorsports. That is a mix of new car reviews and vintage car kind of restoration projects and some actual racing videos. So a lot of good stuff between the two.
I have a YouTube channel where it's mostly just me working on my 1988 Mustang GT. It's Taco Potato Mustang. And then I also have a blog website where I write about food, cars, and travel, tacopotatomustang.com. And I have an Instagram, also Taco Potato Mustang, but I don't update it very often.
I got stuff all around. I got Twitter and Instagram. Those are MotorFriend with an underscore in the middle. I got a website, motorfriend.net. I never put anything on there. Occasionally I have work in larger publications, and I'll link it back there when I do. And then on YouTube, you can subscribe right here. Watch Drivin Theater. There will be more reviews, hopefully weekly. We'll see how scheduling works out. Wednesday nights. And then on Friday nights soon, I will also be giving people kind of a tour through my massive racing game collection. So I'll basically be doing a new one of those every week, a new game, and that's going to be called Race Night.
I think it holds up pretty well over time, despite the immense cheesiness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I really loved it as a kid for, like, I got really sucked in and believed in it all, like, it just enough. And now I very much don't, but I really appreciate, like, what they did with it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of cool hardware in there, whether you think the acting's good or not.
Yeah, I would say the heist bits don't really hold up, you know, compared to the Ocean's 11 remake, which is like the gold standard for heist movies now. But the driving scenes are like, real good stuff even today.
Please remember to replace the speaker on the post when you leave the theater.